If
1 second, Elizabeth, were you with us last time?
Okay. Well, first of all, if anyone has an objection to recording, please let me know, and can talk about other options after class. So I sat down actually this Mishnah in Orla, which the way it's presented in the Gemara is like upside down. First the end and then the beginning. And I think it's probably good to just see it first. It's actually a fascinating Mishnah, I think. Chaval that there's no Gemara in the Bavli on it, because I would like to see what Rashi says about it. But let's take a look. So I sent it out. Let me just turn to it. It's Orla, chapter 2. And it's Mishnah Vav. Yeah. Well, actually, we can start with Mishnah Dalet. Look at Mishnah Dalet, actually. Just the first line of Mishnah Dalet. Somebody want to read it? No, Rabbi Landis. Rabbi Landis, you want?
Can somebody put it up on the screen? Is that possible?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
But that'll take a minute. Then you're right. I forgot about that. Thank you, Rabbi Landis, for being the technological among us. So wait a second. Here it is. There. Is that good? Is that big enough? Good? Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so let's look at this Mishnah Dalet here. First of all, this is just the beginning. Kol ha'machametz v'amitabel v'amidamei b'truma b'orla u'b'klai kerim asur. So anything that causes chimutz or flavoring or midameh is like makes it like tevel kind of b'truma u'b'orla u'b'klai kerim, then it's asur. So it basically we're seeing that things can make other things asur by causing them chimutz or flavor enhancing, mitabel, like spices. But let's skip to Vav. Without getting too much details. Vav is really where I want to start, because this is the kol mechametz. And then they ask, V'lama amru kol mechametz. Now this lama really doesn't mean lama. Oh wait, am I recording? Just a second. Did I? Oh, yeah, I'm recording. Okay. V'lama doesn't really mean lama. It means really when. So it's saying like this. Matai amru. Lama amru kol mechametz u'mitabel v'mitamei lahachmir. When did they say that we should be machmir about these things that mix and cause isser? Called mechametz. It causes it to become chametz, or it causes it to like rise. Mitabel, mitameh. Min b'mina. That's in case of min b'mina. Lahakel lahachmir. When did they say that you can also be makel and also be machmir? Or there's different like some kind of not always being machmir, but sometimes being machmir and sometimes being makel. In min b'sheino minu. If it's min b'sheino minu, if it's two different substances. And first of all, it's already interesting because we're seeing the concept of min b'mino, min b'sheino minu in the Mishnah. I don't know. I didn't do a search in Mishnah how often that appears, but I don't. It's interesting. Min b'sheino minu. Ketzad. And now the Mishnah says ketzad. What is the circumstance? Sor shel chitim. So we've got like some kind of sourdough of wheat. Shenafal letoch isat chitim. That it came into some like unready doughs, and dough that hadn't yet started to rise. So it's your starter dough basically. But your starter dough was, Isser, was Orla, or was Kilai Karen, or was Truma, one of those things. and that starter dough, it came into your, where are we? It's sorry, I lost the place. Ketzad. Soor shel chitim shenafal letoch isat chitim. So it came in. Yesh bo kedei lachmitz. If it's enough to actually cause it to start rising. Bein sheyesh bo la'alot be'echad u'meya. Whether it's got echad v'meya, whether it's, now, let me read this in one way. There's different ways of reading this, but let me read it in one way, which will say, which is whether it has, in other words, whether it's against 101. In other words, if I have the issa, the sourdough is one part, one kazayit, and the dough is 101 zaytim, whether that's the circumstance, or or there isn't 101 against it. It's irrelevant.
How are you translating lalot?
To be batel in.
Okay, because you didn't say that. Okay. Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Whether, because it's not really batel, it's whether it, because it's not, this is what we're about to say, it's usher, it's not batel. So we're going to say whether there is that 101 against it really is la lo. Whether it has against it 101 or it doesn't have against it 101, it's usher. Why? Why is it usher? So here, that's a real question. Why is it usher?
No, but it can be mechametz, right? That's the real reason. So
it's because it's mechametz. What is mechametz though? What is mechametz? There's two possible categories we can put mechametz into.
One is that it has an effect on the actual, on the isa, and therefore it has done. We could, devar hamamid kind of thing. It's something that
right.
Which is a later category, but I think it's later category. I'm not positive actually. So.
We do talk in the Gemara. You're saying it's in the Mishnah. I'm not sure.
I can't remember if it's in the Mishnah. That's the thing.
Hamamid chalav, but where we talk about standing milk in the stomach of a cow. But yeah. So one possibility is that it's similar to the idea of mami, that it's causing a discernible change. The dough would just sit there as a lump of the dough, and now it's rising. And what's the other possibility of why it has an effect? Why that's called noticeable? In other words, why it's not batel?
It still gives time.
Batin time.
It gives some kind of time. Yeah, I guess the yeast, the yeast has some kind of flavor. It's a flavor. So either it's tam, or it's mami. It has some kind of effect. It has some kind of effect, and therefore the effect prevents it from becoming batel. By the way, we have seen previously this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that min b'mino is never batel. So how does Rabbi Yehuda read this Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda would say, well, it's irrelevant whether it gives it flavor or doesn't give it flavor. If it's there at all, it's a problem. How could Rabbi Yehuda read this Mishnah? He says that it's all that anytime it's min b'mino, it's not batel. And this is min b'mino, and then we're still having the requirement that it's machmitz, that it causes it to become sour, to become rising, to become chametz. Why do you have that requirement? Should be us or anyway. Anyone want to take a stab at how he could possibly read it? I mean, first of all, on the surface, it's just a tremendous kasha, and it can't. And Rabbi Yehuda has to be able to explain every Mishnah. Off the top of your head, anyone want to make a stab?
I was reading the second part of the Mishnah as applying to mean b'she'eno mino, but that's how it's sometimes lenient, sometimes machmer.
Right. Right.
So sorry. So, and your question is how Rabbi Yehuda would. I missed before, so maybe I'm missing something. But you were asking.
Well, this is sore, right? This is sore in chitim. Presumably, it's min b'mino.
You're asking how Rabbi Yehuda would read Mishnah Vav.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mishnah Vav, even though it's strict, it's not strict enough.
Could could you say that Rabbi Yehuda is worried about when it's mixed in, and maybe there's some way you could like put something in to make it ferment and then take out that thing, and then like this is saying like if it has that effect, even if you take it out, it's
Right. I mean, that's the only thing I was thinking, that maybe he's saying that the thing is not there at all. Maybe you took it away. But I mean, that would also be a bit of a chiddush, because then that would mean that Rebbe, right. And in other words, he's saying, if you took it out and it has no effect, then it's not there. Actually, it makes perfect sense. If you took it out and it gives flavor and it had enough time to impart some effect, causes it to be mamid, or causes it to change its character or change its taste, then it's still there. And he's holding Tam Ke'ikr, in other words. So actually, yeah, Rabbi Yehuda could learn the Mishnah that you took the thing away. I think that's the way you'd have to learn it. The thing is not there anymore.
Rav Nachum,
no.
can you just remind me, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is Deoraita?
Yes.
It is, okay, yeah. So.
Yes, it's Deraita.
weird.
He holds that Deraita
Tell me.
minimum is not possible. Okay, so let's leave that. That's just interesting. We're saying it's an amazing Mishnah, I think, kind of. Because first of all, it tells us that it tells us this idea, first of all, 101, which is a strange number. It tells us that flavor can impart at 101 ratio, and then it's going to still be usher. And the 101 is not going to help us. It kind of fits what we said about Rashi. Remember, Rashi said that the whole thing of 60 is in addition to not having, Rashi says that requiring 60 against the item is an additional factor above and beyond the requirement that the flavor of the Yisr can't be there. He holds that there's two requirements. So this kind of fits to that and saying, in addition to the flavor not being there, well, if the flavor is there, then the 101 is not going to help you, which seems to imply that if the flavor is not there, then the 101 will help you. So you need to have both.
Is 100 and, I'm sorry, help me out. Is 101 here playing the role that Aleph plays elsewhere, later on?
No, I don't think so. No.
You said it was just a large number.
It's an actual number. It's not saying Aleph in the sense that it's never batel. It's saying the exact amount, 101.
Okay, good.
So okay,
Because
that's helpful. Yeah, it's the exact amount, 101. Now, so I mean, so it sort of seems like from the Mishnah so far that there's two different factors going on here. You need no flavor, and you need let's read the rest of the Mishnah. You'll see that it's going to come out even more clearly. V'yesh bo k'dei lachmitz bein sheyesh bo la'alot b'echad b'mei bein she'ein bo la'alot b'echad b'mei asur. Ein bo la'alot. Now we go the other way. Ein bo la'alot b'echad b'mei. Bein sheyesh bo k'dei lachmitz bein she'ein bo k'dei lachmitz lechametz asur. So if you don't have that required 101, then then the thing is asur, whether it has flavor or mamid status or not. So in other words, by min b'mino, it comes out that you have two requirements. You need to have both 101, but that's not enough. You need to have 101 against it, and you need to have that you can't taste it, which is very different from the, how do you say, the going opinion in the world that numbers are just proxies for flavor being there. And when we talk about having 101, in other words, it's just, 100. We never really talk about 101. We talk about 60. We talk about 60 meaning that the flavor is not there. And here we're seeing even a bigger shiur, and yet it's not a proxy at all for flavor not being there. It's a different thing. Like this. Now, okay, fine.
That's very good, I have to say, because we've been struggling with that.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I seem to be like in the past 3 weeks, I've been emphasizing Rashi's opinion. It seems like Rashi's a very strong reading because there's two different things going on here, right? You need to have two criteria to allow this. Can anybody give me an objection to that? There is a kind of lingering doubt about what I'm saying. Because what are these things? These are, in other words, what is this requirement of 101? Is it a deraita requirement?
It's a humrah. That's
Right. It's a chumrah.
of Derabanan. I mean, it's the way the Mishnah.
Maybe.
Right. Maybe the Mishnah is saying like this. It's a chumrah derabanan that we require 101 by these special things, by these really special things, this truma and orla, not regular isurim, kilaya karen, very special things. We have this extra requirement. So maybe that's what it is. The rabbis came and made an extra requirement. And maybe Rashi holds the same thing as the 60. 60 is an extra requirement that the rabbis made. Okay, we can learn like that. We can that would put it as a derabanan. That's probably correct. Let's go on to the next, to Zion. Zion says lahakil lachmir, because we said lama amru kol mechametz v'tavel v'damei lachmir min b'mino. That was by min b'mino. We're lachmir. Where we saw in this case we were machmir both ways. We required both conditions. If it had one but not the other, or the other but not the one, either way it would be asur. We need both conditions. That was lachmir. But lahakel lachmir is by min b'she'eno mino. So we're going to explain what that is. That's lahakel lachmir. That's min b'she'eno mino. Ketzad, what's the case? Kagon, grisin, shenit bashlu im adashim. So now we're also getting now very nicely a definition of min b'she'eno mino. Right? Min b'she'eno mino is, like we would think, two different things. Grisim, which is like wheat berries or barley. Shenit bashlu im adashim, that cooked with lentils. As opposed to like the wheat and the wheat dough, which you might try to say are different things because they have different flavors. Right? Don't they have different flavors? They certainly do have different flavors. And they have different names. One is called sor shel chitim, and one is called chitim. They have different names and different flavors, but yet they're min b'mino because ultimately they're all wheat. I'm just saying, if we're worried about defining what min b'mino is, it seems like min b'mino could, maybe it doesn't have flavor. Maybe what we said, maybe this is dvar ma'amid, or we said maybe it's flavor. But min b'mino seems to be that ultimately this is all wheat. Here, these are different things. So therefore, the law is different. These are two different types. So we say, yesh ben noten tam. Now we have the concept of noten tam. Yesh ben noten tam, which means I can taste in the adashim those grisim that were presumably tevel or orla, truma. Those grisim I can taste in my adashim. Yesh ben noten tam.
Mejadra.
What?
Mejadra.
It's Mejadra.
Mejadra, yeah. Well, that's rice. That's rice, but yeah, they maybe didn't have rice. Anyway, nitbashlu im adashim. Yesh behen benoten tam. If you can taste the grisim in the barley, bein sheyesh behen la'alot be'echad b'meya, bein she'en lehem la'alot be'echad b'meya. Whether you have this amazing shiur of 101 against it, it's going to be asur. Why? Because you can taste it. We didn't say that before, presumably, because maybe you can't really taste wheat dough in wheat, which seem right. Maybe that's the point. Like here, you can taste it because two different tastes. So we have this noten tam concept, and it's going to be asur. Even the shiur is not going to help us. But what about this? Ein behen benoten tam. What about if you don't have noten tam? So then, bein sheyesh behen la'alot be'echad u'meya, u'bein she'en behen la'alot be'echad u'meya, it's mutter. So, what's the factor that determines whether something is mutter or asur?
Noten tam.
That's it. Noten tam rules. That's it. There is just noten tam. So what's this echad b'meya? Does it help us in any way?
It helps us in min b'mino because we can't tell the tam apart.
Right. So it sounds like, no, but we have other factors in min b'mino, which is that it could have some kind of ulterior effect, some kind of machmetz. So if it's detectable, but let's say it like this. Let's say it like this. If it's detectable over here, if it's not detectable over here in min b'mino, then you still need the shear. If it's not detectable over here, then that's it. It's not detectable, you don't need the shear. So basically, we're throwing out the whole shear of 101 when it comes to min b'she'eino mino.
Which brings us back to the idea that the counting or the measuring is just a stand-in for noten tam, or having an effect, or other things, and goes against Rashi.
You're saying if we have, well, there's two choices. You're saying if we have the concept in min b'she'eino mino of numbers, of measurements, then the only possible purpose it could be is as a stand-in, as a surrogate for tasting. But I could propose that we don't have the concept in min b'she'eino mino. In min b'she'eino mino, there's just no concept of numbers. The whole concept of numbers only applies to min b'mino. That's what the Mishnah says. And by min b'she'eino mino, it's irrelevant. The numbers question just it doesn't have any position.
Right, but Nachum, you're saying it then b'min she'eno mino, that the two elements combine so that you can't distinguish them. If you have like a wheat and lentils together and they've combined in some way, those min she'eno mino, they've become like a different substance,
Yes.
and you differentiate the flavor.
What do we call that in the words of the rabbis? We call that what kind of mixture? We call that a lach balach mixture.
What's that mean?
In other words, this becomes a lach balach. In this case of Zion, Zion, it has to be either that you cook them together to such an extent that you cannot separate them, and then it's a lach balach. Or if you didn't cook them together, maybe you could remove them. Maybe you did remove them, but there's still flavor there. That would Rashi might learn like that, like because he said over here maybe you remove them, maybe, or Rav Yehuda might learn like that. But whatever. The point is, it's a lach balach, right? Obviously, these two things have cooked to the extent that you can't distinguish them. You've overcooked your majadra. It became mush. And now you're wondering, do you taste the wheat in it? And on that, that's all we care about. Do you taste it? And of course, who's going to be tasting it here? If it's aser, by the way, if it's truma, we could have the Kohen taste it. But if it's orla, we cannot have the Kohen taste it. We could have the Goy taste it, maybe. Fine. Okay, so that's the Mishnah, which basically is saying that, let's just put it down to like the most minimal rule. I would say like this, that in min b'mino, we have two requirements. Number, 101 and 101 and no effect. In min b'she'eino mino, we just have the requirement. We do not have I'll say it like this. We do not have the requirement of 101, but we do have the requirement of not tasting. You cannot taste it. You have to be indetectable. It has to be not detectable. If it's min b'she'eino mino, it's two different substances. It has to be indetectable. Now, why should that be? Is kind of bizarre. I mean, I don't know if is that intuitive? Why should it be that we throw away the number question just because it's min b'she'eino mino?
Because it's not necessary. You've got no time.
Well, then why is it necessary in min b'mino?
Because in min b'mino, you don't necessarily have time. As you said earlier, and I was saying that also as well. If a bit of wheat falls,
so you don't have time, it should be mutter.
Well, no, because it still is orla, or it still is whatever it is. The fact that you can't taste the difference, that I could have a piece of pork that tastes just like beef, and it falls into my beef. It's still pork.
So in other words, you're saying like this: if it's not machmetz, we're not just going to let you off the hook. You obviously can't taste it, and it's not machmetz. We're not just going to have no requirements. So we have to have another requirement of bittul for bittul. So then, by the way, it comes back the idea that the number is a stand-in for, kind of like what Yavni was saying. The number becomes a stand-in because in Mishnah Vav, we needed a stand-in because we had to have a stand-in, so we use the numbers. In Mishnah Zion, where we don't need a stand-in, we can get rid of it. We can lie and taste, and that's it. So it comes back actually that maybe it is a stand-in for taste.
Because you have Occam's razor here. You don't want to have, if you don't need it here at this point, if you don't need it, you want to have one criterion as opposed to the criteria. So you would say this is the early halacha.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't really do a full research, but this is one of the I mean, certainly it's the earliest place that ever talks about min b'mino and then bittul and requiring numbers. 60 never appears in the Mishnah, as far as I know. I mean,
So 60 is a kula.
somebody please somebody jump in and tell me I'm wrong. I didn't do a full search. I did actually a search for something, but sorry. So go ahead, Reverend Landis. 60 is.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, it's sounding now that we want one criterion, and we stand in, as your terminology goes, struggling with min b'mino as opposed to min b'she'eno mino, and therefore, which should be the criterion? What should be the criterion in each case? Say it that way, as you said it. And then later on, there may be other frum concerns to make sure that everything is covered.
Right.
And we can still say right now that we don't know about 60. And I'm asking the question whether 60 ends up being a kula, so to speak.
Well, that's a great question, because I actually want to address that. Because 101, I think, here is a special law 101 is such a funny number. 101 is a special law for these special things, for dama, for truma and tevel. This is tevel, but essentially, and truma. Well, here's tabel, which is spices. That's actually interesting. Why?
No, the tevel is parallel to mechametz. Mechametz, tevel, u'medamea, those are what they're doing, and then what they are is the tuma and the orla.
Okay, nice. So you're saying it's 3 and 3. There's three acts there's 3 effects that could be there. The mechametz, mitabel, and midameh. And what could be doing those things? Truma, orla, or kilaya keren. Very nice. It's 2 sets of 3. Very nice, yeah. But what about other things that are not these special 3 things? Truma, orla, and kilaya keren, like just regular pork. So the 101 might not apply to it. It might be a special law of 101 for these special things. And that regular Isurim, and that's what the Gemara comes up with, that the regular Isurim have a different number, and that's 60. But it's sort of it's based on the same principles that we see here, but it's a different number for other Isurim.
Can I go back to the stand-in question?
Yeah.
It seems to me that we'd be dying for a case where there's no issue of where it's min b'mino and there's no issue of actual flavor, and yet we could measure it in reality because of its ability to make something rise, right? So in theory, that's the perfect case to test it, and they say no. The fact that you can see whether it's allowing it to rise or it's not enough to make it rise is not the standard. So it feels to me like in min v'mino, it's a different standard. It's not actually a measure of taste. If we could taste it, then we would. If you radioactively dyed these chitim versus those chitim, would you see it or not? It feels to me like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Meaning, because this is the perfect case to test that, and then they say no. It's a more strict standard. And I'm wondering if maybe there's something about min b'mino that dafka, because you can't taste it, there's sort of almost like an anxiety of the unknown, because it's invisible. It's no longer a stand-in for taste. It's its own. It requires its own and a more machmir standard.
There's a certain fear. You're saying there's a certain fear of min b'mino.
Yeah.
I have a response. Though, which is that, it's sort of a technical response. The fact, I don't think that it's a proper litmus test, the rising, because it could be, some very, very strong starter dough that it really just boom, everything starts rising. It's a warm day and it's moist day, and this dough starts rising even though it was a tiny amount. So it's not necessarily a litmus test to tell us that it's not there, because even a small amount could have an effect.
It's not that the small amount can have an effect. I think it's the fact that the dough, even if you didn't put the starter dough in, the dough of the okay wheat could have started rising on its own, because that's what dough does.
No, but what Aliza's asking the other way around. Aliza's asking if it didn't rise, shouldn't that be enough of an indication that this starter dough is not there? We put the starter dough in and it didn't rise for a year. for whatever, for a day, we're still going to require you 101. Why? It didn't rise. That's actually what Elisa says. So actually, maybe that's so. So the fact that it didn't rise, so that goes against me. Why isn't that an indication that it's not there?
I think there's a question of I'm going to put this in like quotations.
You're right. It's a very good question. Now I take it back. I do not have a response. I do not have a proper response. But Joel has a proper response. So
no, I know if it's proper. I'm going to throw it out there because I'm still struggling with this. But like the sense that it flavored it, but it's mimba, so we'll never know if it flavored it, kind of thing, right? We might be still tasting the effects of the starter, but we don't know because it tastes just like the wheat. And so we need 101 to make sure that we're not tasting the thing that we never would be able to taste in the first place.
In other words, you have to say like this: that the fact that it didn't rise doesn't mean that there's not some flavor there. Maybe the rising, maybe the opposite of what I was saying. Maybe the rising might require, maybe it was a cold day and the rising didn't happen, but even though we had a lot of starter there.
Yeah. So I would say
that the number is some kind of absolute, and the flavor and the hachmatzah should be, line up to the same number. But it seems like from a more basic level, can you be mevatel something that still has an impact? So in some cases, the impact could be flavor. In other cases, it could be hachmatzah, but we don't want that in a case where that we've already said that this is a category of mimba, because that we just have a higher standard for. It's a different set of standards. It's not, can I test it? It's, did it live up to some kind of higher, I don't know.
I hear you. Rabbi Landis, you want to say something?
No, I like it very much, the conversation. I like Elisa's points. My language, right, in other words, we're trying to rationally deal with the fear of contagion. And each situation may, and at this point, in the back of my mind is at this point, they're trying to get as secure as you can get, but maybe one criterion is sufficient to find that out. That's got to be a really good criterion at this point. Anyway, I'm on your side.
Well, just to say the other side is just to say that the fact that it's not causing it to rise doesn't mean it's not there. We still have to have it not be there, so we have to have 101. And that's called not being there. As who said this about California? There's no there. You don't know that's a famous quote. I can't remember who said it.
Great woman writer.
Is it Joan Didion?
Yeah, it's a woman.
It was before Joan Didion.
There's no there. You never, because you drive to Los Angeles. I've never been to Los Angeles, but apparently you drive to Los Angeles and you say, "Am I there yet?" And you just you just keep driving, and then you're in San Diego.
It's true. Now especially it's true.
So here we have to have that there's no there. There has to be no of this orla there, even if it's indetectable. It can't be there.
Sorry, it was Gertrude Stein.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Gertrude Stein, thank you. Okay, so that's our introduction to the subject. Now, I just want to say what the Gemara is going to do with this, just as an introduction to the Gemara now, is that it's going to sort of say, well, when it said in this second part, in this Zion here, when it said that you don't need 100, you don't need 101 when you don't taste it. As Rabbi Landis said, the Akum's razor says, we just have one criteria. Do you taste it or you don't taste it? The Gemara is saying, no, maybe not. Maybe when it says you don't need 101, you don't need 101. But you do need, some other number. You don't need 101, but you need at least to have for sure, you need to have at least 1 and 2. You need to have a majority. You need to have 1 and 60. Maybe you need to have, well, we'll see. We'll see what the Gemara says. But all it said in the Seifa here is that you don't need to have 101. And we thought that meant that's it. You don't need any measurements because that's the only measurement we're talking about here. Do you need 101? You don't need 101. But the rabbis in the Gemara are going to say, no, you need some other measurement. It's like, and what's that measurement? It's 60. But we didn't say 60 here. It's a crazy Gemara. It's like the famous proof that Yaakov wore a kippah, that he, Yetze Yaakov. Would he go out? Would a Jewish boy go out without a kippah? So that's how we know that Yaakov wore a kippah. In other words, we say we don't need 101. So what do we need? So now we can make up anything we want. That's what the Gemara is going to do. It's a little bit. I struggled with this Gemara. I hope you guys will struggle with me. But I do need somebody to read because I can't read everything. But somebody who read it before, hopefully.
Get rid of the Mishnah.
Yeah, thank you. You're my technical advisor. Okay, I should actually put up the Gemara. Where I want to, let's put up the Gemara. Why not? It's more interesting to look at the Gemara than to look at me. But I gotta find it. Ooh, it's a little bit fuzzy. Okay, you guys see the Gemara? No?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Okay, so I can't read that Gemara. I can't read that Gemara. But we're going to start. We basically, we could go over what we did last time. It's actually a huge topic of this whole part of the first part of the Gemara, but I'll leave what Noam did and say that we'll continue from where he left off. He basically did the beginning here, and we are at Yativ. It's right here. Yativ Ravdimi. So somebody jump in and start talking because I can't see you actually because I'm sharing my screen. Oh, Lisa, you want to read it? But make your microphone not muted.
Yeah.
Tell us again where we are.
We are. I can point to you where we are. We're Yativ Rev here. See where I'm pointing? Over here. Yativ Rev Dimi. The first one on the line is Ba'alma. Yativ Rev Dimi. So this is right. Yativ Rev Dimi. Go ahead.
Yativ Rev Dimi v'ka'amar la lahashmatata.
All right, so stop there. What shmata did he say? You have to look at Rashi.
Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak.
That doesn't help us any. Where is this Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak? So turn back if you have a Gemara. And it's on page Sarichet, on the very bottom, 3 lines from the bottom. If you have a real Gemara, you can get there quickly. If you have a fake Gemara, it takes you longer. But it's 3 lines from the bottom of Sarichet, and it's on Amud Aleph, and it says Rav Shmuel. So he said it's Rav Shmuel, right? Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak v'Rabbi Ata Omer Ken Hachi Amar Rav Asi Amar Rav Yehoshua ben Levi Mishum Bar Kafra Kol Isurim Shebetorah B'Meya. That was his statement. That Isurim Shebetorah are B'Meya and not B'Shishim. That was the statement. So Yativ Rav Dimi was sitting there in the Beit Midrash, and he was saying the Shmata of Rav Shmuel by Rav Yitzchak, which was that 100 is the requirement. By the way, I'm just going to keep over saying this over and over again because I got a juke in my head, which is if there's 100, they're not arguing about the Metziut. They're not arguing about whether it takes 100 to get rid of a flavor or 60 to get rid of a flavor. They're arguing about a special din, special arbitrary number that they made up. Is that number 60 or is that number 100? And because if it would be a Metziut question, we would just ask 100 goyim to taste things and see if they taste it at 60 or they taste it at 100. So obviously, I think it's a extra requirement of 60 or 100. And I mean, you could get around what I'm saying, but fine. Anyway, that's the shmata of Rav Yitzchak Bar. I mean, you could get around what I'm saying because you could say, no. They all agree on the Metzius. They just call is that flavor called the flavor. Is the flavor that you take at 60, is that called the flavor? No, it's not. The other says, yes, it is a flavor. That tiny flavor is called the flavor. You need 100 till it goes away. So they could be that they're not arguing about Metzius, they're arguing about what's called the flavor. But, right, that would be I'm just giving you, let's lump this. I'm just, whatever. That's just a different way it's a way of answering why it's not a question of Metzius. But anyway, I'm sidetracked.
What's a standard that's high enough to cover most flavors?
Or exactly, you can say it like that. What's a standard that's high enough to cover most flavors? But the Shulchan Aruch is going to paskin in the end that we don't use 60 if you taste it. If it's pepper, then we throw away 60. It's not, like you said, it deals with most history. I think it's a mistake. I think it's all a mistake. I really think that it's a mistake in the halacha, that really the 60 is an arbitrary number, and it's above and beyond taste, and taste goes by each individual thing, because we can't make a statement all Isurim have the same number. As a kviut about flavor effects, it can be a kviut about our requirements, our arbitrary requirements. It can't be a kviut about flavor effects. Soy sauce is a bigger flavor than other things. Anyway, so Rav Dimi said you need 100. And Yativ Rav Dimi was quoting the statement of Rav Shmuel that you need 100. Amar le Abaye. So go on from there. So Abaye didn't like this. Question mark, exclamation point.
והתנן, למה אמרו כל המחמץ ומטבל ומדמע להחמיר מין במינו, להקל ולהחמיר, מין ומינו, להקל ולהחמיר, מין ושאינו מינו.
End of quote.
וקטני סיפא, להקל ולהחמיר מין ושאינו מינו, כיצד? גריסין שנתבשלו עם העדשים, אם יש בהם בנותן טעם, בין יש בהן לעלות ב-101, בין אין בהן לעלות ב-101, אסור. אין בהם בנותן טעם, בין שיש בהן לעלות ב-101, בין אין בהן לעלות ב-101, מותר. אין בהם לעלות ב-101, אלא במאי, לאו ב-60.
So wait a second. There he's going. On that sefer that we saw, that you don't need 101, he says, you don't need 101.
So min b'mino, you need 101, but min shebe'eno mino, you don't need 100, but maybe you do need shishim.
Don't say 100, say 101.
101.
Because it's going to get confusing with this 100 and 101, we're going to see. But at the moment, we're saying 101. You don't need 101. No, you don't need 60. And that's the kula, as opposed to the din of min mino, that you need 101, even when you don't taste it. As we're comparing two cases, the same case. We're comparing the case of the case where you don't detect the flavor. In that sense, it's the same, but it's different if it's min be'eno mino and min be'mino. If it's min be'mino and you don't detect the flavor, you don't detect the rising. You need 101. But min she'eno mino, if you don't detect the flavor, you don't need 101. You need 60. He says. So how could you be telling me all the surim are by 100? We see here clearly that you need 60. Of course, there's open to obviously Abaye is open to a very simple teruts. And read that next line.
Lo, b'meya.
Period. That's Rav Dimi's answer. What's his answer?
It's not 101, it's 100.
Right. You don't need 101, that's true. All the Mishnah says you don't need 101. What do you need? 100. So in that sense, truma, min b'eno mino is more mekel than min b'mino. In min b'mino, you need to not to detect it, and you need 101. In min b'she'eno mino, you need not to detect it, but you only need 100. And that's what the Mishnah is coming to teach us. The kula of min she'b'eno mino, that you only need 100. Now, Abaye just couldn't imagine that's what the Mishnah is saying, because like the whole Mishnah is written just to teach us there's a difference of one, of one. Who could even know if it's exactly 100 versus 101? So Abaye didn't think that was a possible answer, as presumably, but that's what Rav Dimi said. He said, no, that's what it says, and it's an obvious answer, and it works technically. Does it make much sense? Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Who knows?
But even Abaye's thinking that, oh, the Mishnah teaches shishim and not mea, that's already a radical read of the Mishnah. We spent the entire beginning of the Shiur talking about that you don't need any Shiur. The fact that Abaye even assumes that I guess original read that we had isn't even in play is a radical move.
Oh yeah, I agree.
You can't imagine a world in which 60 is that.
But it's less crazy than saying, well, it's not 101, it's 100, right? You know, like, yeah.
It's this Gemara. I mean, you know, I find myself saying this about every Gemara, but this Gemara is very strange. Yes, the Havamina, you know, there was the straight reading that we had of the Mishnah was very nice. Akum's razor. You don't have any requirement. But now the Gemara seems Rav Dimi and Abaye seem to agree. No. There's got to be some requirement there. There's got to be some ratio that we're going to require.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the point here is that the Gemara is in a world where they can't. There has to be a number at the end of the day, right? They're not willing to, like, they're living in a world that says their bittul must be number based. It might have other categories, but there must be a number at the right.
Right. Well, I mean, it's Torah based out of concept because we have Acharei Rabim Lahatot. We do have, in other words, we can't say it only matters by taste, because what if you had mostly pork, but you just can't taste it? You know, I mean, for some reason. It does make some kind of sense that there should be a number. Could be rove, though. We have to, I mean, I'm saying like this bittul, in a sense, you could imagine a world where bittul requires numbers. Just not being able to taste it is not necessarily bittul. But or you could say, like you're saying, no, not tasting it, that's whole bittul. It's not there. I don't taste it. It's not there.
Yeah, I mean, you're right? Because you presumably saw it fall in, and so it's hard to tell yourself a story that, like, but I saw the pork fall into my soup right at the end of the day. You know, I don't care if I can't taste it. I saw it go in. You know, it dissolved. Maybe it was juice or whatever, right? Lach balach. But still, like, I think it's very hard to say, oh, it's not there anymore.
I mean, many people, if an actual piece of pork fell into their soup, they would not go to the rabbi. They would just throw it out. In other words, they're not going to start measuring and say, make another soup. A fleishik spoon in the milchik pot is a different story, but an actual piece of pork, it might be a little bit strict. Yavni, you want to say something?
Oh, I wanted to check that I understood correctly, that the assumption for this whole discussion is that the original Shma'ata about 100, about the opinion about 100, Kol Yisurin Shebatorah B'mea, is that, like, that's required, or that's like necessary or sufficient?
Well, exactly. That's you're asking a hard question. I think, what do we mean? Kol Yisurin Shebatorah? The way I would like to translate it, in being influenced by Rashi, is that all Isurim have an extra requirement of 100 in order for them to be permitted. The way others want to say it would be, I think, strange, which is to say, all Isurim, you can no longer detect their presence once you've got 100 against it. Except for the exceptions. So we had to say all essential isurim, because pepper, remember, is not an essential isur. It's only by happenstance it could be usur. It could be used for avodah zarah. But essential is, it could be talking about those things that the Torah prohibited, camel meat and donkey meat and those birds that are listed in the Torah. All those isurim, which are just regular things, are all batil b'shishim. That could be the kaviyut, not like Rashi, not like the way I want to read it. So you're right. It's not clear what that batil b'shishim is. Do we also require shishim, or are we making kviut? Shishim will get rid of it in reality.
Nachum, can we hear? Lexi's got a point. I don't think I fully got it.
I don't. So Lexi, go ahead and talk.
All I said was that this was from back when we were discussing how, like, even Abaye's opinion about this Mishnah, obviously referring to shishim, seems to be more than we were necessarily assuming when it comes to there not being a tam. And I was saying that just seems to align with the seemingly machmir Rashi opinion that we've encountered, that like you would need both shishim and ekfela, which seem to disagree with some of the other places that we saw where it would imply that you need one or the other. But Abaye here seems to be in line with that. So you need both shishim and no tam.
You're right, because the fact that he's saying, you're right, Abaye is saying, yeah, very clearly, and not only Abaye, also Rav Dimi. The whole Gemara here, but let's say Abaye also is saying, even though you can't detect it, for sure you need a shiur. So the whole concept of detecting it being enough, like everybody except Rashi says, it doesn't really fit this Gemara, right? This Gemara is very strong, like Rashi. Yeah, everybody seems to be saying you need a shiur. Rav Dimi says 100, and right, Abaye says you need 60. And that's in the case where it's min b'she'eino mino and you don't taste it. And that's not the way we paskin today. If you don't taste it, that's it.
Yeah, and this might be part of a motivating factor as to what prompted Rashi to explain that way somewhere else. That like we were also saying, oh, like maybe it's just part of this intuitive nature we were thinking of. There must be a number. It must be something less amorphous than that just XYZ. But also, like Rashi, like he's not as much of a harmonizer as like Tosafot, but he likes explaining things in accordance to what he sees elsewhere. So it's possible that he got that opinion from himself.
Maybe, right. Certainly, I think Rashi here is aware. All the Rashis here are aware of all these circle of pages. He may not harmonize different masechtot but he's certainly aware of this whole sugya. So yes, I certainly think he's affected by what says here. Could have led him to say what he said before in the famous Rashi on page Tzadichet Amud Aleph B'Samech. Okay, so we're left with that. So now Rav Dimi answered Abaye, and let's take a 4-minute break. And then we'll see how we continue. We are now back, and we are on Tzadi Tet, Amud Bet, the 2 words in. We just read Lo B'Meya, which meant his answer, Rav Dimi's answer, is saying, no, actually the Mishnah did require you to have Meya when it's Eino Mino, not 60. And that's why it said Meya Ve'echad. Didn't have Meya Ve'echad. It needs Meya, though. Okay. But, yeah. There's a big machloket, Rashi and Tosfos, on how to read the rest of this Gemara. Let's give a third opinion. Let's give our... Okay, go ahead.
והא מדרישא ב100 הווה סיפא ב60? דקתני רישא, להחמיר מין ומינו כיצד, שאור של חיטין שנפל לעצת חיטין, ויש בו כדי לחמץ, בין יש בו כדי לעלות ב101, ובין אין בו כדי לעלות ב101 אסור. אין בו לעלות ב101, בין שיש בו כדי לחמץ, בין אין בו כדי לחמץ אסור.
Okay, so This is Abaye's proof that it must be shishim. So actually, the way you read it should be ha mideresha b'meya ve'echa. Since the Reisha is talking about meya, the seifa must be shishim. It's not a question.
Okay.
Now, how do we say that the Reisha is meya? By the way, well, because the Reisha clearly says meya ve'echad.
Right.
Why
Is
does
he
it say?
reading it as Maya of the Heter and one of the Isser?
Yes, that's the way he's reading it. He's reading it Maya. He's saying like this: I read the Reisha, maybe and the Seifa. Whenever it says Maya, ve'echad, it really means Maya. It means Maya versus Echad. It means Maya versus Echad. And then, if it's Maya versus Echad, then in the Seifa, if it said you don't need Maya versus Echad, you can't tell me that you need Maya. Because it just says you don't need Maya. In other words, he reads the Maya ve'echad as if it's written Maya. And then you can't jump down from Maya and ve'echad, you can't jump down from Maya ve'echad down to Maya. Because it is always talking about Maya. Now, of course, there's an obvious answer, which is, no, it's talking about Maya ve'echad. In other words, Abaye is like sort of assuming what he's trying to prove. He's saying, I assume that Mea ve'echad, but he says it in a very strange way. So he quotes the whole Reisha. But he said like Reisha b'mea. It sounds like almost like he's saying, since the Reisha is in Mea and it doesn't allow it, then the Seifa must be not requiring Mea and requiring 60. He said the words are really bad. He should have the Gemara. If I would write the Gemara, I would write it like this. I'm just looking at the first line. It should be, he said after Lo b'Mea, it should be Hamideresha b'Mea, that it's Aser, even when Mea. Have a Seifa, that it doesn't need Mea, v'lachen hu tzarich shishim. In other words, that's the difference. The Reisha says you need Mea, and the Seifa says you don't need Mea. And therefore, what do you need? Shishim. The language is very strange because, whatever, you can't get it from the words, because the Reisha b'Mea, the Mea there is the Mea that you, even if you have that Mea, doesn't help you. And the Shishim at the Seifa is the Shishim that does help you. So it's very unparalleled. But that's what he's saying.
He's saying don't split hairs. 101 means 100 plus 1 of Isur. Yeah. So obviously we're talking about a totally different shiur. We're not talking about
exactly. Basically, that's the way I would. Yes, that is what that's what it comes out. It comes out the 101 is really 100, and therefore don't tell me that you that the shiur that allows is 100. That's the shiur that we're not requiring is 100. We're not requiring 100, so we must be requiring a lower amount, which is 60. So,
Rav Nachum?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, right, and maybe this is just obvious, is that both of them insist that there is a number less than 101, for which by the Seifa, even if there's no tam, you need at least that ratio.
Oh, for sure,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, and so by saying, right, by forcing the Seifa to be about Mea to 100 to 1 ratio instead of 101 to 1 ratio, right, Abaye is essentially trying to eliminate the other reading.
Yes, that's what he's doing. But of course, Abaye, it's not much of a kasha, because Rav Dimi can just say, "Well, I don't read it like that."
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
I mean, it's not much of a kasha. You just say, "Okay, you read it like that. I read it differently. Go prove me wrong."
But
it's not a proof. It's just a possible reading. It's not much of an attack. The fact that he could read it that way, and also I'm bothered by the fact that he, right? Okay, so fine. So we quoted the whole Gemara. So he says, so wait a second. So how do you read the next line? V'reisha v'seifa. Who's saying that?
This is either it's
This is Rav Dimi, isn't it?
I think it's still Abaye. It's. I think the way I think you have to read this as a pair. So the beginning, it's Abaye because the beginning of Abaye's challenge is V'hamid Reisha b'Meya Habe Sefer b'Shishim colon. Then he cites the Mishnah in which he knows that Reisha b'Sefer b'Meya. Do you mean then that both the Reisha and the Seya mean Meya?
No, I think it's. I mean,
In other words, exactly. Yes. No, you're right. He's right. In other words, both. Are you telling me that in Minda Minnow I require 100 because that's what 101 really means, and in the Reisha you just told me in the Seifa you just told me I also need 100, but that can't be because then there's no difference. It must be that the Seifa requires 60.
So I think it's Rav Dimi challenging Abaye, saying, "What you're going to tell me the Reish and Seifa are about Mea? No, I never. That I said that. I never said that. I said one's about 101, one's about 100.
comes out.
It may not matter.
Whichever way, it matters.
Well, okay.
They just don't talk that way, but it comes to the same meaning, though.
Yeah,
It comes out the same, but I go with Noam actually.
Okay.
But let's go on. So the ants either. So I would read it as now low Reisha. That's now Rav Dimi talking, I think. Low Reisha. So go or either way, it's the answer. Go ahead, Yavni.
Lo Reisha b'mea v'chad Reisha b'mea v'chad Seifa b'mea.
So in other words, the Reisha requires you to have 101. And the Seifa requires you to have 100. Well, that's back where we started. That's just back where we started.
Yeah.
You're just saying, no, I don't read it that way. So that's like really weird because we didn't usually have them, the answers push us along in new understandings. Here we're just saying, no, I don't read it that way because the attack wasn't any attack anyway. I didn't have to read it that way in the first place, and I don't read it that way. What the mistake that you could have when you read this Gemara is you could think that he's saying, Lo Reisha b'meya ve'echad. Because when it says meya ve'echad, in the Reisha it means meya ve'echad. And in the Seifa, when it says meya ve'echad, it means meya. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that the requirement that comes out of the Reisha is that you have a requirement to have 101, even when there's no flavor. And the requirement that you have in the Seifa, which is where it's min be'eno mino, is that you have a requirement of having 100. Because, why is that? Because the whole time we're talking about 101. Really 101. So we're just back to where we were. And Abaye's attack is not much of an attack. And now Abaye comes up with a new attack, which is also a very weird attack. Go ahead, read this back. The key.
וכי יש בו כדי לחמץ במאה ואחד, עמי לא בטיל.
Right.
So he's asking, how could it be that there would be enough in 1 out of 101 that it would.
It's like a totally new attack. And he's sort of saying that if you're talking about that you've got 101, what is he saying? Which case is he talking about? He's talking about the case of min b'mino. Where we were not batel. And he's saying if that's a case where you didn't have, where v'ki yeshbo k'dei lachmitz, how could you have a case in the first case where there's 101?
And it would,
And it would also cause chimutz. It's impossible. At that ratio, you'll never get chimutz. And yet the Mishnah says that if you have 101, you also need it not to be machmitz. Well, that seems like an extra requirement because once you have 101, that's okay. Well, that also makes no sense because all of a sudden Abaye is saying that 100 he understands. 100 he has no problem with. 100 can be machmitz, but who would ever think that 101 can be machmitz? That's going too far. I mean, okay, that's what I'm saying. And on that kasha, he's ishtik. Oh, you're right. Everybody knows that 101 is just impossible. 100, you could have machmitz, but 101 is just impossible. Like I said,
101. South African Bay. 101 sounds like you canceled my notion earlier of the notion of 100 being like an infinite number, or like an Aleph number. But now they're talking in such a way that I just feel like I have to bring that back for a moment. That you need a lot more than you even need over 100. So that's 101. See, I don't think 101.
Yeah, you're right. 101 is over. Let's call 101 over 100. But still, what he's saying is over 100 for sure. It's not going to be machmitz, but 100 it could be machmitz.
That's not true.
Where did he get that view? Where did he get that amount? Where did he get that determination? How did he determine that at 100 everybody agrees that it can be machmitz, but over 100, even if 101 means over 100, over 100 it's okay.
In his day job, he worked in a biology lab. He studied
I
yeast.
add a tablespoon of wine to
Studied yeast. Okay, you got it. You got to draw the line somewhere.
That's more than 101. It's a tablespoon. So it depends what you're talking about.
We got a question over here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, do it again, sure.
Sorry.
Speak to the maid.
But you could have a situation where a small amount of something adds a taste to a much larger amount. So if you're so isn't that me'ah v'echad? If you add a small amount of flavor, and you mention more tamari to a large part of something that's over 100, it's going to give the taste of tamari to the larger pot. So isn't that me'ah v'echad? Isn't that you've added a small amount to a large amount that affects the tastes?
Yeah, but what we said was like this. We said in a case of min b'mino, essentially what we said is it doesn't give a flavor. In a case where it doesn't give a flavor, it's still going to be usher. And what are we going to require? We're going to require 101. We're going to require 2 criteria. That was the ratio. It's not min. It's min b'mino. We require that there's no flavor there for sure, and it's still going to be usher until we get, let's call it over 100. Then we get some other amount. We got that over 100 amount. That's why I'm saying 101 really is 101, because it's an amount that once we get it, we're okay. Now we're okay. We got 101. It's now mutter. So he's saying, but also we said the reverse. If you have 101, and it is machmitz, it's no good. And on that question, he's saying, how could it ever be that you have 101 and yet the flavor is still detected?
That's possible, though.
It is possible. And he says it's like muvan me'elav. It's so obvious to him that once you have 101, you'll never detect anything. And that's what I'm laughing at, kind of. I'm perplexed by it. Why? How does he know that? And how come 101 you'll never detect it, but 100 you could? So it may be that they have. Listen, it may be they have some kind of magical. We understand everything through science. We're scientific. It could be they have some kind of magical understanding of things. That they understand that once you get to a ratio of 100, over 100, it's so small that it isn't there. In other words, it's not. There is a threshold, and that magically at that point it just goes away.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm using the word magic is an exaggeration, but what I'm saying is like. We have all kinds of. We're living after the Enlightenment. We think you can measure things and exactly, and things are gradual. Maybe they think that at a certain point, I'm just thinking of the Gemara that says, "Eino dome," I don't remember exactly lashon, but Eino dome, the person who did Chazara 100 times to the person who did the Gemara who did Chazara 101 times. That because 101 is like is all of a sudden a new world. It's a new world. We've gone past the 100 measure. So maybe it does make sense in a kind of magical understanding of science. Anyway, that's what I say. And on that, and even worse is that Abaye accepts it. I mean, not Abaye. Rav Dimi accepts it. Ishtik. You have nothing to answer. And then comes back Abaye and helps out Rabbi Dimi. Says, you know what? I have a teretz for you. So go ahead, Yavi.
אמר לי דילמה שאני, שאור דחימוצו קשה, אמר לי אי דקרתא.
No, stop. Amar le, Dilma Shani Sor. So he says, you know what? Maybe Sor is different. The chimutzo kashe. Because its chimutz is very powerful. Like kind of like the varamami. And it's like, concentrated spices. And you put that in, and even at 101, it could. So you know what, Rev Dimi, I can help you out. At 101 could be different, could be still usser. And the whole Mishnah could be talking about 101. The whole Mishnah could be talking about 101, and the kula of the seifa is really 60. I mean, it's really 100, not 60. And why is it that even though there's 101, you still could possibly taste the sor? Because the sor can be very powerful. And Rav Dimi likes this answer, which is also this answer, well, is hidden within it a certain kotz. It's aliyava kotzbo. It's an answer that has in it a certain problem. But we'll get. Let's see what Rav Dimi likes it very much. So read the next line.
אמר לי, אדקרתן מילתא דאמר רבי יוסי ברבי חנינא. So this reminds me of something that Rabbi Yossi said in the name of Rabbi Hanina. לא כל הסיורים שווים, שהרי ציר סיורו קרוב ל-200. דתנן.
לא כל השיעורים שווים.
Oh, לא כל השיעורים, שיעורים, yeah.
Not all the shiurim are the same.
Not all the measurements or comparisons are the same.
In other words, the shiurim of bittul. We're talking about the shiurim of bittul.
Right.
The shiurim of bittul are not all the same. Why? Shaharei
tzir. So this, I guess it's this like a sauce, a gravy or something.
It's actually, if you ever made gravlax and you pickle salmon, some kind of you put salt on it, a juice comes out.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what it is. It's some kind of juice that comes out when you salt the fish.
So that its amount is close to 200, meaning like you can still taste it in 1 in 200.
Right.
The
How do you get 200?
From this baraita that says dag tamet siro asur. Rabbi Yehuda Omer revi'it besatayim. Yeah.
Right. Revi'it besatayim. So if you know your measurements, a revi'it is in a satayim. Satayim is 196 revi'ot. It's almost 200.
It's almost 200.
But
192.
192?
I think so.
You could be right.
I'm going to go redo the math.
It could be you're right. I just remembered it from memory that it was 196, but it could be 192. There's a famous thing. Kas, Kelev, what is it? Yadudu? No, I don't know. Yagudu. Anyway, whatever. I'll show you later if you want. There's a measuring ratio. Okay, let's go on. So he says, you reminded me of something that not all the shiurim are the same, because the tzir, sharei tzir, because this tzir that comes out of fish, shiuro karol d'matayim, it's close to 200. The Tanan, dag tamei tziro asur, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, revi'it b'satayim. It's asur how much? In revi'it b'satayim.
Give a
So
full sense.
what?
Nachum. Just give a full sentence about sear.
Sear is very powerful, and it can cause if the sear is from a fish that's usser, then that sear can ruin kosher food, even to the level of 1 in almost 200. So you see that not all the shiurim are the same. Now, is this, why do I say this is an aliyah v'chutzpah? Why is this an answer that he jumps on with 2 hands, but it actually has in it a poison for his whole shita? Because what was his shita in the beginning, Rav Dimi?
Was the mea.
Yeah, and everything is Abaya gives him an answer for your question. Yeah, an answer for your question. Oh, you're right. Sore could be more. It could be more because look, the fish is more. Oh yeah, the fish is more. Yeah. Oh yeah, it could be more. So it's not really 100 then. But that was his whole point. His whole point, or was it? I mean, let's think about this now. I'm putting out a possible thing. It seems like Rav Dimi has now ruined himself because he's saying, oh yeah, I remember there's the whole concept of things being us or in 200 and maybe 300, maybe 1,000, who knows? All kinds of different measurements. Local shirim shavim. And yet I'm the one who said all is surim arbameya. So
they're having a real chavruta. It started with Rav Dimi Yativ Rav Dimi v'ka'amar lahashmata. He raised the previous statement, and he was playing devil's advocate, but he didn't necessarily say that he was for it the whole way through.
in other words, he was teaching it. Yashev means he was sitting in the Beit Midrash teaching it. But maybe he was just discussing it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think the idea is that he accepted it. But you're right. In the end, it sounds like Abaye tricked. You could read it as Abaye tricked him out of his opinion. He gave him a tough kasha. There wasn't 101, 100. How could it ever be that 101 is detectable? He says, you're right. And he says, but actually 101 could be detectable and then he says, oh yeah, you're also right. So now we're back, or not. Maybe this is not an attack. Maybe this is not a self-contradiction because maybe Rav Dimi was never talking about flavor. Of course he knew this mission. Of course he knew that you could have 101 and the chametz would still be detectable. He was never talking about that. When he said kol shirim were batel in 101, what he meant was the maximum shear that the rabbis ever required arbitrarily was 101. But he was not talking about detectability. That's a different shear. That shear is anything, depending on the thing. And it's not a contradiction because he's holding like Rashi. Or, in other words, because the 101 is just the maximum shear that the rabbis ever required. Except I think there is a 200. Isn't there like Orla b'matayim? Okay, whatever. I don't know. But whatever. He held that everything was 101. And this is not a contradiction to that. Because that shear was just saying all things being equal, the flavor not being detected, the extra chumrah of requiring a number is never greater than 101. And then
except when it is.
Except when it's detectable, then you go by you go by the greater of the two. In other words, if it's still detectable, right. If you've got 101, but it's still detectable, then it's, of course it's usher. And in fact, the fish example is a great example of that.
It's the exception proving the rule. No,
what I'm saying, it's 2 different planes. We're operating on 2 different planes. There's the plane of numbers, of just a rabbinic kind of requirement of having 101, and there's the plane of Tom being detectable. And in fact, we paskin like that. We paskin that if you have 60, it's batel, but if you can detect it, it's not batel. In other words, if you have pepper, that's very powerful, and it's usser, and it's in your food, and you can detect it at 70 to 1, it's the food is usser, if the pepper is usser. So in other words, there are 2 planes. You need to have 60 is not a catch-all for taste. Okay, so that's that piece. And now just have me read a little bit more to the 2 dots.
והאמר רבי יהודה בין במינו לא בטיל שני ציר דזיה בעלמא הוא.
So wait, who said this statement about the fish broth being batel going odd to 200, up to 200? Who was the stater of that statement?
Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Yehuda. And what is Rabbi
Yehuda?
Yehuda?
The one that says min b'mino isn't batil ever.
Right, and the tzir of fish in fish is fish min b'mino.
Right.
Wait, so how come he's saying it's batel?
He's saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Well, it's not clear to me that. Sorry.
It's not clear that it's min b'mino. Is that what you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, because it doesn't say that the tzir of a dag tameh is mixed with the tzir of a dag tahor. It says that the tzir of a dag tameh makes things
right
aser in 1 and 200. So maybe that's like the tzir on an actual fish, or maybe it's in your sauce for your pad thai or whatever.
Right. That would be a possible answer. The Gemara could answer, no, this is the case of min b'sheino mino because it's sear in pasta. But that's not, and that is I don't know why the Gemara didn't give that answer. That's a great answer. But let's see what the Gemara did say though. Didn't say that.
Shani tzir dezia ba'alma hu. I don't understand it.
Sear is not actually really usser. It's just sign of a sweat that comes off of the fish, and it's not really usser. It's like only usser d'Rabbanan. It's like
so. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda is going to be mekel on it.
Yeah, because it's not really usser in the first place, so it's just sort of be mekel. Even though it's coming from a tamei fish, it's not really connected to the fish.
Right.
It's like sweat. It's like maybe it came from the air and landed on the fish and then dribbled off. I mean. Again, they're not really living in a post-enlightenment world. Who knows how they understand how that sear is created. Saying it's not really connected to that fish. So therefore, he's been mekel. Okay. Now we have one more concept to learn in the Gemara. And somebody who want to read maybe Joel, you want to read?
Sure, why not? All right.
Why not?
All right. Kitzad Misharina. This is going back, I think, to the Mishnah, right? Of how we measure the yerach with the gid.
That's right.
And it says kibasar belefetz, right? That's what the Mishnah answers. So Amar Rav Huna, kibasar berashe liftot, right? So he says it's not just with the lefet, because lefet has different parts of it. It has this is kind of getting this from the Rashi. It has the root and the leaves, and he's saying it's the leaves that we measure it with.
Right. Of course, I just want to point out Tosfos says exactly the opposite. Tosfos says, no, the rashim are the roots. So we're left to wonder, but it's certainly one of them and not the other. That's in other words, we don't know. I'm a Rabbi Huna, right? So fine.
All right, but here's the problem. Matnitin delaka haitana detanya. So our Mishnah doesn't match this following Tanaitic statement, though. Rabbi Yishmael benosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer im begidim benoten tam. All right. He says the gid doesn't have tam at all, right? So that doesn't work very well.
Wait, I have a question though.
Yeah,
I have a question. I'm bothered by this and I don't have an answer, so I'll say it as a kasha on the Gemara. Why are we measuring gid as lefet? Why do we have to measure it? Just taste it. Just have a goy taste it. If we're assuming that gid has a flavor, then why do we need to do an imaginary analysis and say, what would it taste like if it would be lefet in meat? Why do we need to do that imaginary analysis? Just have a goy taste it, like we would normally do. Have a goy taste it and tell us if it's, you could answer, well, We don't have a goy around.
Isn't it mean to me no? Isn't like the nerve and the thigh itself, like, aren't those considered mean to me no? And so you can't, it's like understood that you can't necessarily taste the flavor it would impart.
So you're saying it's indetectable by testing, and therefore, well, then why are we saying and we're in the world before we have
Like
the
we're
measurement?
saying we're using, yeah, as in
We're
like
in the world
this is
before
either a
60.
world, right? This is either a world before we have the numbers, or where we consider the like Tom to be the ikar of the thing, and the numbers aren't really the main thing we're focusing on. And so the main thing we care about is like, if I could detect this flavor, how like would it appear here? And so that's why we're using the meat and turnips as like our, paradigm.
So in other words, you're saying that any time we have a case of min b'mino, we will imagine it's turnips and meat and see what our imagination tells us whether we would detect it or not.
Well,
And
I don't think we do this with all of them. I think there are cases where you're supposed to imagine it's like onions or something. I'm getting different cases confused in my mind right now, but I think there are cases where it talks about imagining something being like onions because it's more harif. But it seems
why
to be
would we
existing
use
in a,
different measurement? If that's just, if the whole problem is because it's min b'mino, then anytime we have that problem, we should use the same measurement. We're not actually, it doesn't matter. It's min b'mino, so it doesn't matter whether it has, extra flavor or less flavor.
right. So that's like a weirdness to it. But I think this is existing in like a separate paradigm from the numbers.
Fine, but okay,
we're just trying to say like we care about whether some kind of flavor exuded from this. Since we can't detect that, I mean, we know. We're just gonna like guesstimate that with something we think is roughly equivalent.
Mm-hmm. She's saying it's min b'mino, and what would the normal din of min b'mino? Well, Rabbi Yehuda would say min b'mino is never batel. So this would be a Mishnah that contradicts Rabbi Yehuda. That's impossible. Rabbi Yehuda has to be able to explain every Mishnah. Right? It's impossible that this Mishnah could mean what you're saying, because then why would it be
how are you reading? But then how are you reading the Gid as how are you reading the Gid as being not min b'mino with like the other flesh, the thigh?
It's a different flavor.
But like there aren't other cases, like we just seem to generally treat like basar, like the animal, as being min b'mino. Like there's even a debate. If there's a debate as to whether like chelev is min b'mino with meat, then certainly other meat with meat should be.
No, point of fact, chalev is actually not considered the same time as meat unless the meat is very fatty. So the gid maybe
but isn't there cases where it is?
But the gid is certainly, if the meat is very fatty, then chalev is the same because they have the same flavor. But maybe gidim have a different flavor and they're very different from meat, and therefore it's not min b'mino, it's min b'she'eino mino. And then I'm back to my question: why don't we ask a goy to taste it?
Well, this seems like another point as to why it would be min b'mino and what with the goy is to like, because if there's a detectable flavor, we ask a goy because
yeah, but I'm saying if it's min b'mino, then the world ends, because Rabbi Yehuda has this opinion that min b'mino is never batel, and how could we imagine it's lefet? He can't. It's a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah. We can't just ignore a Mishnah. There's nothing more important in our life than Mishnah, says Rabbi Yehuda, and he's got to explain every Mishnah. And this can't be a Mishnah that says min b'mino is batel. If you imagine if you imagine that it wouldn't be min b'mino, then that's a whole new idea. If it wouldn't be mino, then we'll do it. Then we'll imagine that it wouldn't be min. We'll imagine that's not min b'mino, and then we'll solve all our problems. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold like that. Joel, you want to say?
Well, can't we just imagine that there's no goy, right? That we've used that answer before. So.
Right, but I have a slight. But then you're never gonna, like, you're never not always not gonna have a goy, meaning.
Then it should be mentioned, right?
The one time that, right?
Exactly, it should be mentioned. It should be mentioned. Have a goy. The Gemara should say, have a goy taste it, and then the Gemara should answer, but makom she'ein goy, and then we would know the rule.
But doesn't the Mishnah itself kind of say that, right? It says, right. And then it asks Ketzad Mesharinan, right? So if it has no tentam, it's asur. Okay, but how do we measure it if there's no goy, right? I'm adding words into that.
All right. You're persuading me. You're persuading me. You're persuading me.
But I cut off Noam, so it was rude.
I have a slightly different read. It doesn't work so with the words, but I think it's possible that when we learned that big Tosafot last week, there was a distinction between Tom Gumor and Tom Koldahu. So I'm wondering if when Rabbi Shmuel Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka says Aim Begidin Beno 10 Tom, he's not really saying a 0 Tom, because as you said, you can taste the gid to see if there's a Tom. Maybe he's just saying that whatever Tom it is, it's not counted as Tom. It's like not significant enough.
Well,
so the reason that you don't need to ask
I agree with you actually. That is a kind of direction I was interested in going. Yeah, that they were not. That I want to say because I want to say that that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Actually, is that there is a flavor here, and we could detect it by tasting it. And the Mishnah is saying that. The Mishnah, in other words, it comes out now. What we're saying is that the Mishnah is saying, like Joel said, that if you have a goy, taste it, and if you don't have a goy, then measure it. What does that prove? That there is a flavor in Giddim. You just, right, there's a flavor there, and you could detect it. And then we're going to say, but wait a second, we have this statement, there's no flavor in them. How can you explain that against the Mishnah? The Mishnah is clear. So you're going to have to say something like what you're saying, Noam, that flavor that it has is a negligible flavor. But then what? It's detectable, but it's not an usher flavor. I don't know. The Mishnah is saying let the goy taste it, right? And yet, it's not really there. I don't know. It's not really enough of a flavor to cause an isser. Well, let's read the Gemara. So we're back to let's go back to the Gemara. So he says, the metnitin de loka hai tana, the Tanya. Wait a second. Right. The Tanya, Rabbi Yishmael beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka Omer ain't begidim no ten tam. In other words, these ones have no ten tam. Our Mishnah says that they do have tam, and the only reason you have to imagine it is because you don't have a goy around. So we go ahead, Joel.
All right. So Huda atalakame de Rabbi Hanina, Haviyati Rabbi Huda Barzvina Abava, Kinafak Amar Amarle Maya Marlacha, Amarle Sharya Niale. All right. So let's see. There's one guy sitting at the gate who let me get all the names right here. One guy sitting in front of Rabbi Hanina. Rabbi Yehuda sitting at the gate. When this guy leaves the Beit Midrash, Rabbi Yehuda says to him, "What did Rabbi Hanina say?" He says it's permissible. In other words, the Gida Nashef, it's cooked with other things. If you,
he was sitting at the gate. This is like his shimush harav. He was sitting outside the Beit Midrash, and every time somebody went in and had a question and came out, he would interrogate them. Oh, what did you ask? Oh, what did he tell you? And that was the way he was going to learn halacha. And he heard this halacha that he was matir the Gida Nashef that was cooked, this yerech that was cooked with its gid in it. And he says to him, what does he say?
He says, Amarle Hadar Ayalela Kame. He says, go back and ask him again, in other words, right? I don't believe that answer. Amar, Man Hay de Kamitsarli. So this is, I think, is Rabbi Hanina says, well, who's bothering me here when he goes back? Zil Ema Leila Mandiati.
Who's causing you to come back and ask this question again? Who's at the gate bothering me?
So he says, go say to the one who's sitting at the gate, Ein begidim benotem tam. He says, go tell the guy at the gate. This is Rabbi Yehuda. Was it Rabbi Yehuda Barzvina? Go tell him there's no tam in gidim. Kiatu lekame the Rabbi Ami mishader lahu lekame the Rabbi Yitzchak ben Chaluv the more ba lehetera. All right, mishum the Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. All right, velelos lasferale. All right, so there's a whole who is it? I lost track of the names there, but when he gets in front of Rabbi Ami, and who sends him in front of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Chaluv, who teaches that it's permissible. In other words, the gid has no flavor, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. All right, but he doesn't agree.
Isn't Rabbi Yehuda Yoshua ben Levi, the Rambam list is like, or the Gemara basically says he's always right? Halacha always
Halacha is
goes,
always like him. Yeah.
it's always like Yoshua ben Levi, which is
So-
that ain't beginning time.
So, and even though he doesn't agree v'hilchata in begidim benotan tam, nonetheless, we have the halacha come out that the gidim do not have tam.
So wait, so our Mishnah is not like the halacha.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
The Mishnah is not like the halacha. The Mishnah says that the Giddim have time, and we could even detect it, and we could imagine it. But we don't have to do all of that work because the Giddim don't have time. Okay, that's so. By the way, you should know that the Giddim do, even though the Giddim don't have time, what we do, Paskin, is that the Shumana Gid is Asur D'Rabbanan. So, even though the Giddim don't have time, this Yerek would seem to be Asur, according to that halacha. Because it's cooked, if it's cooked with its Gid, it's probably cooked with the Shuman of the Gid too, which is adjacent to the Gid. So it seems like they don't even hold by that rabbinic law of the Shuman and Gid being Asur.
Or it was batel b'shishim, meaning it was enough to knock out the shuman, but it wasn't enough to knock out the gid.
Right. Well, that's another question, right? Why was he bothered by the fact that he matched it? Maybe he matched it because he imagined it was a left fit and it came out all right. Because maybe that's why he wanted to go in. That's interesting. Maybe the reason that he wanted him to go in was to find out the reason why he matched it. Did he match it because this statement that maybe he determined that the amount of gid was so small, or did he match it because of ein beginning tam? And he answered, the reason I match it is because ein beginning tam. Fine. So ein beginning tam, and that's why. So the Mishnah is essentially, we don't necessarily follow this whole thing of imagining it as a lefit or whatever lefit is. All right, that's all I have to say today. If there's any, we can go early maybe. If there's any questions or anybody wants to, Joel, you want to say something?
I just want to do for next time, Shani and I are going to send out some 2 additional Gemaras, and we're going to put some instructions if you could learn the whole thing and, Tavo Lechem Bracha, but you can also look at the Rashi for those Gemaras, one in Zvachim and one in Beit Sa, and that will help with the beginning of the next sugya. So.
Okay, great. So, so next time will be Joel and Shani, and they'll send out sources. And just to summarize, we saw. Let's just review quickly in a few words. What was the? How are we going to leave this statement of Rav Dimi? Rav Dimi, are we rejecting him?
Okay.
Or is he still alive? Is his opinion still there? I think in the end we kept Rav Dimi's opinion. We kept his opinion that maybe it's.
But he seemed to reject his opinion.
Right. Well, one way of reading that fish thing is that he rejected his opinion that there are more. But I tried to say that maybe his whole idea of 100 is above and beyond flavor. Is parallel or is on a different plane. He's also requiring bittul, and that could be 200. It could also be 50. The bittul of the flavor. It could be in 50, it could be 200, it could be in 300, it could be in any amount. But we'll never allow you anything less than 100. Even if the flavor is not there. That's his opinion. And I think that becomes, and all of that concept sort of we're going to end up possibly like the other opinion that it's 60. And all the same rules are going to apply. All the same concepts of 60 being above and beyond that it's already was batel, the flavor. In other words, you can't, and we do l'chumra paskin like that in the sense that we don't really paskin like Rashi, but we sort of paskin like Rashi. Rashi says 2 things. Rashi says there could be cases where where the flavor is still detected, and then it's going to be usher even if you have 60. That we pass it. The only thing we don't pass is what Rashi says: when the flavor is not detected, you still need 60. That we're not going to pass it. But that kind of comes from the Gemara very nicely, from the 100 case. If we apply the rules of the 100 to the rules to the 60, it would come out like that. And that seems to be agreed upon by Rav Dimi and Abaye. So in the end, I'm sort of saying that the Chumrah of Rashi that nobody knows actually makes a lot of sense from the Gemara.
Is it possible to say, though, that what Abaye is trying to do is to convince, I don't know if he's convinced or not, but to convince Rav Dimi that Mea is not, or Mea Vechad is not connected to reality, and that is true for the Reisha because it's Min B'mino, but for the Seifa, Min B'She'eno Mino, he says it's not Mea, it's 60 because it should be something that is closer to estimating taste. And that's why I get into the whole question of, well, maybe there'll be lots of exceptions to that rule. But the rule, getting back to the Mishnah in was it Orla?
But you got to remember. But then he's saying you need 6. When Abaye, even Abaye, who says you need 60 in the Seifa, that's in a case where the flavor was already not there, where you already tasted it and it's not there. So what's the 60? What's the function of that 60? It can't be to tell you that the flavor's not there. We already know the flavor's not there. You see what I mean?
Right, unless we say that, as we've been saying, that we are looking for a proxy because most of the times we don't have someone to taste, but we're only looking for a proxy which is somewhat realistic when it comes to Min B'She'eno Mino. When it comes to Min B'Mino, we are looking dafka for something that's not a proxy, that's more extreme.
But again, I hear what you're saying. It's possible, but I think Abaye himself would reject the 100 altogether. Oh, I see. You're saying the Mishnah says 100. You're right. No, you're right. I take it back. Yeah, you could say like that we require 100 in when we aren't looking for a proxy, and the 60 is when we're kind of looking for a proxy. I'm still a little bit uncomfortable with it because Dafka the Mishnah is talking about having 60. Just to repeat what I said, this Dafka talking about having 60 where there is no flavors. It's not a proxy. It's a parallel world. It's an additional requirement.
Not explicit in the Mishnah, and Abaye is reading on the Mishnah, right?
Well, if you're going to talk about a number at all, you're right. And Abaye is reading. You're right. Abaye agrees with Rav Dimi that even where you don't have a flavor in Min B'She'eno Mino, and there's nothing detectable, they both agree that you need some extra shiur. And what is the function of that shiur? It's not to say it's not there to be a stand-in for flavor. It's some other function. It's just to say there's bittul here. It's nullification in a spiritual sense. It's nullification of that thing.
But Abaye's challenge to Rav Dimi is dafka that the question of 101 is not connected, but meaning the part of the Mishnah that he quotes back to him is the part that is interested in taste, is interested in detection. Seifa.
The Seifa says once you have detection, then you don't need any measurements. But he understands that.
Yeah, we need a measurement, but that the purpose of that measurement is to help us with detection.
No,
Obviously,
it's not. That's what I'm saying. I don't agree with that because the purpose of that can't be to help you with detection because the Mishnah already stated that it's a case where it's not flavor, where the flavor is not there. We already asked the goy, he already told us, and yet we're still saying you need 60. That's what Abaye said. That's Chumrat Rashi. That is what's known in the Rishonim as in the Achronim as Chumrat Rashi. When there's no flavor, you still need 60. I mean, I don't see it as a stand-in or a surrogate for taste because it's used in a case where we've already determined that there's no taste. But I see what your point is. It's sort of associated in the case where taste is an issue. I understand that. And you're right about that. All right. Well, I'll leave you guys to think about it.
Nachum, you want to summarize? Not summarize because you've given us, but What's Rashi's motivation? What's the motivation of that chumrah?
Well, I think there are two approaches to it. One is for the sake of how do you say good, not good looks, but not good looks, good appearances. Yeah, for the sake of good appearances, that you shouldn't seem to be eating something that has a large percentage. Just because you don't taste it, a large percentage of viscera. I think that's part of it, and I think there's also another thing, which is, I think, is like sort of this bittul. I mean, this is what I said once. Bittul of the taste is by tasting, but bittul of the actual essence of the substance, perhaps, requires that 60. In other words, there's two bittles going on. Bittul of flavor I determine by tasting it, and once it's not there, it's batel. It's how do you say? It's empirically batel in the flavor. But the mamashut is not batel. I can see pieces of, I can see extra pieces in my pot. Well, there has to be so few extra pieces in your pot that it's a ratio of 1 to 60, so that the actual substance can be batel. That's one.
Your two reasons actually work very well together.
Yeah, they're two. The
It's
two
not
things.
just you go this way. There's an answer from appearances. It doesn't look good, and then there's an answer like, hey, but talking about appearances, you seem to see something there. Therefore, we need this number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
But Yav, you want to say something?
I have a, I think, somewhat forced way of trying to defend Aliza's take and like defend us from Rashi's Chuma being inherent in Abaya's opinion, which is to say that let's say he really believes that it's not, there isn't a necessary shiur, it really is just about taste. He's arguing against the original statement that you need 1 in 100, which is what Avdimi was reciting by bringing this Mishnah, and he's saying, in the ratio we require 100. It's clear from the Seifa that like we don't require 100. Like, can you also require 100 there? Wouldn't it also be allowed even if it were less than 100, even if it were say 1 in 60, just based on the taste?
What you're saying, I hear what you're saying. Let me rephrase what you're saying. I think what you're saying is like this. Maybe Abaye never seriously thinks that you need the shear of 60 in the safe at all.
Right.
He's just saying to the Shitat Ravdimi, who holds that you always need 100. So Ravdimi must be thinking that even in the safe you need 100. And on that, which he never said, but he's assuming, and on that he's saying, Ravdimi, you can't prove that you need 100 there. You can only prove that you need 60 there in the Seifa. But I personally don't think you need anything there.
No, I think he's not even saying you can prove you need 60. He's saying like even with just 1 in 60, which is less than 1 in 100. Let's say we don't even have the concept of 60 because that's coming out of nowhere here. He's saying like let's say it's less than 1 in 100. Let's say it's 1 in 60. It should still be allowed by the Seifa. This is my time. Yeah.
It's lav dafka 60. It's just something less than 100.
Right.
Right.
Could have been
well, he does use the word 60.
Yeah, but I'm saying he's just throwing it as an example of like we have something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, and he think. But that's the point. And what? But why didn't he say rove? Why didn't he say rove? Why didn't he say lav berov?
Maybe because that's harder to imagine. Like you're not going to be able to taste it if it's half and half. No, like you can't taste it. It's like it's 1 in 6. It's like what you're gonna, if someone brings you something that's 1 in 60 and you can't taste it, you're gonna tell them they can't eat it.
The approach of what you're saying is to say that Abaye never really opted in to the requirement of 60 in the Seifa. He just said it as a kind of an attack.
Right.
But didn't we have earlier, a few dapim earlier, that 60?
You had a statement, Kol Surja B'Torah
You
B'Shishim.
don't have a kfela?
Well, we had earlier that if you don't have
Some kind of linking
yeah,
between 60 and in
Rava
the
said. There's a famous statement of Rava. There's a statement of Rava that we started off with a few weeks ago.
right.
You're thinking of Rava Amar. Amar Rava Amur Rabbanan betima, Amur Rabbanan bekfela, Amur Rabbanan beshishim. Hilchat Amin b'sheino mino, Hetera betima, Desura bekfela. Yeah,
So
we
to go
have that
back,
statement. That's a later.
he's using 60 to say the Seifa talked about flavor. So if you can't test it, then we're at 60. But the Seifa was very explicit that it was talking about flavor, and so you can apply the 100 to Kol Yisur Torah. If again, like Yavni says, if you really need a standard, then we're going to go to 60. But the Mishnah is talking about flavor, so 60 is as close as we get when we don't have another way of testing.
I like what you're saying. It's nice. It's nice. Very nice. I mean, in any case, Tosfos doesn't agree with Rashi's Chumrah, so we have to be able to explain our Gemara according to Tosfos. So you're on the right track. I mean, we have to have another reading. All right, I'll leave it. I don't have much. I'm not going to look at Tosfos now. So you guys can work on a better shot or another shot. But let's stop for today. And I look forward to Shiur next week.
Nachum, yeshkoyach.
Oh, thank you.
Bruchtier. Okay, Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what was their last statement?